live. We are live. Save.
Go orange.
Go orange.
But yeah.
Boom.
I was hoping everything was
Facebook.
I can get it.
We are live on YouTube.
I'll be.
Probably the
I'll,
most.
it's just the
Boom.
problem is that that.
I'm gonna post in Signal. We are live on YouTube. We're live.
Don't apologize for
Boom. And then
Palestine crisis. Yeah, like,
This isn't going anywhere. I mean, it's not like it's really an accident.
this should work. We are live on YouTube.
I mean, I mentioned like what if somebody
yeah.
and then
We're live on YouTube. We literally forgot the easiest thing in the book, aka pressing start stream on OBS.
That's what you didn't do yesterday?
That's what we no. That's what was problem when I was causing my stream.
Well, that's good now.
literally forgot all the signals.
I mean, I don't understand what you guys do.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no.
Why
We're
would
live
not?
on YouTube.
And if I
That's probably like
You and I have done this like
person.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? There we go.
There's like there are a lot of big packs of Democratic Party. There's a lot of James Street. It's a lot
I mean,
of
it's very dependent.
Love technology when it works. And I don't forget the easiest thing in the book.
I think the thing that we should do is I think about this a lot.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, okay.
What I do
don't
is
see
I
any-
turn on my camera.
Yeah.
How my hard drive.
Great.
Shit.
Yeah.
Boom.
Great, Ben.
If I'm in
Can
bulk
you
now,
share with me the thing that the SD card, the download?
OBS
I
hotkey.
can use Google Drive.
What?
OBS move slide hot. OBS move slide
Just send me
hotkey.
your email.
Yeah.
I already sent
Oh,
you
you
a
did?
Google
What
Drive
hotkeys for OBS?
Okay.
in Signal.
Is your voters
Great.
email, Jeff?
And
Yeah,
you
I
can share
did.
that link with anyone.
Right, thank you. Yeah. Sorry, yeah, what happened was
OBS slides hotkey.
have the SD card except for that.
OBS
Because I needed a little
fair.
dongle to make it work.
Yeah.
slides.
Questions? Okay. I might have answers, so I can find answers.
Okay. I just need to go back the slide. Boom.
Oh, yeah, sweet.
Back to full
We're
screen.
on.
And then
God, man. You were just like,
I know what I need. Boom.
No, we had it.
Yes, I know the one person watching. It's literally me and my quality stream.
The video's working with it too.
Like,
I just opened email.
yeah, I feel like something like,
I knew we just
Boom.
needed to think about it.
like I don't want Jackson to get like a refundable deposit.
Hello everyone, welcome to Leaders Explorer
Like,
Day
just
2.
$100
We're going to be starting in just about 2 minutes. Thank you so much.
So that's live right now, right?
That's live.
Cool.
All I just need to do is just exit out every time to change slides. Because I couldn't figure out the hotkeys.
Cool.
We're great.
We're vibing and thriving on YouTube and Twitter and Twitch. I had no idea.
We went that way last song, but it doesn't mean anything.
Introducing Voters of Tomorrow's Chief of Staff, the one and only Bailey Hona.
That's how you pronounce.
Hi everyone, good morning and welcome to day 2 of the Leaders of Tomorrow Summit. We're so excited to have you here. Like Mariana just said, my name is Bailey Hona and I'm the Chief of Staff here at Leaders of Tomorrow. I'm a 15-year-old rising high school junior from Connecticut, and I'm honored to be the youngest member on the Voters of Tomorrow national team. Shockingly, I got into politics at an even younger age. My earliest memory of being involved was the 2016 election. I was mobilized by the fear of my younger sisters and I being shot in school, the fear of losing my rights as a young woman, and the fear of my loved ones being attacked who they are from the President of the United States, all at just 8 years old. My mom is a union organizer, and that summer she took me to knock doors for Hillary Clinton. I didn't realize it then, but I now know how powerful my voice was and still is, and I haven't stopped for 1 second since. Now don't get me wrong, being the youngest in almost every room is tough. I'm in constant fear that I'm not being taken seriously, that I'm not being listened to, or that I'm seen as too naive. I want to make sure that I'm one of the last that has to worry about that. I realize how rare it is to be in conversations with some of our country's top political leaders before I'm even allowed to drive, let alone vote, but I'm so proud that Voters of Tomorrow is normalizing this. The VO team, as we call it, is made up of some of the most amazing people I've ever met, and I'm so proud to call so many of them close friends. We worked so extremely hard to put this together for you all, and I want to give a special and very big shout out to our special projects team, Raghav Joshi, Jackson Weinstein, Shreya Sampath, and Marissa Siddiqui. Without them, we literally couldn't have made this happen. We hope you're enjoying the summit so far, and we're very excited about what we have planned today. We'll be hearing from our elected allies, such as former Senator Doug Jones, former Representative Montgomery Jones, Maryland Delegate Joe Vogel, and U.S. Representative Ted Lieu. And we're also excited to hear from amazing youth activists and strategists, as well as a few other phenomenal leaders, like Sarah Rosenberg, Graham Roth, Javier Gomez, Olivia Giuliana, Kat LeBou, Annie Wu, and of course, our very own Victor Shi. Before we get started, here's just a few important reminders. Water is always available in the foyer, and if you haven't already, please don't forget to join the Leaders of Tomorrow line where you can get important updates about what's going on. Information for that can also be found in the foyer on the registration table. And finally, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to find myself or anyone else with a red staff badge or a pink all access badge. We are more than happy to help. Again, I want to thank you all so much for being here, and you're the reason we do what we do, and I'm so inspired by every single one of you. So with that, please help me in welcoming Voters of Tomorrow Strategy Director Victor Shi and former U.S. Senator Doug Jones.
I'm ashamed to good morning, thank you all for being here. Yesterday, I don't know if you got to attend, but it was such an energizing day. You all were amazing. Thank you for being here on a Friday morning. I am joined by former Senator Doug Jones. He is sort of on ground zero, sort of in terms of the attacks in his home state, Alabama. I wanted to talk about what's happening in your state, because the last time we talked, it was the Supreme Court basically said, the maps that you drew discriminated against black people. You draw your maps, and now it seems like Alabama has literally defied the Supreme Court. So let's start with that, and what do you think that shows about the broader Republican Party?
Sure. Well, one, thanks again for having me, and thanks to all of you for having me. I really appreciate it, and thank you for actually being here, not for me, but for what you're doing. And you've got to go to places like Alabama. You've got to do those things. Alabama has always been what I call the making state. Missouri is the show me state. Alabama is the making state. And that is that they continually defy everything that court orders have done over the years. We've been forced to desegregate schools. We've been forced to update our mental health, our prisons, the whole 9 yards. And so the Alabama Alabama legislature, which is Republican dominated, has a supermajority. Of course, we've got a Republican governor. Decided to just really, put the finger to this U.S. Supreme Court and said, we're not going to draw a second majority minority district, which is required. Really, our population in Alabama requires that. And Alabama is changing demographically, changing considerably. In fact, it's something we'll talk about a little bit, because the entire South is changing. And so they defined that. In fact, they passed a map that only has one, which we have right now, one minority district, and the other one's not even close. And so it's going to go back to the three-judge panel. But I will tell you what it's done. It's really interesting. When the people are getting fed up with these supermajorities who just railroad everything, ramrod everything through, and basically against the will of the people. You don't even understand. Gerrymandering is the worst thing that's happened in this country. And it creates the partisanship that's out there. When you only have to listen to a small number of people, that's what they're doing. So we're internet.
I mean, it's so certain that, you have a qualified Supreme Court that basically, overturns rights, and that rule, this is the victory for voting rights, you have Alabama state parties that seem to be really extreme, and I'm wondering if you see that happening across the South, and how optimistic you are for the future in terms of, young people, what is our role in this, how extreme is it getting out of the state of Oklahoma?
It's getting extreme, ultimately to some extent on both sides. But it's not just in the South. You are seeing legislatures in Iowa and Idaho doing crazy things on women's reproductive rights, following the lead of the Supreme Court, trying to roll back transgender rights. It's happening across the country, and it's because of the red and blue divide that we're seeing here. Again, it goes back to gerrymandering and partisanship. But the fact of the matter is, that what I'm seeing across the country are folks like you, and I mean you collectively here in this audience, that are mobilizing, energizing, doing the kind of things necessary to bring attention to what's happening to people. And that's the real key. What's happening to people, not just political power, not just political party. What's happening to your friends who are being marginalized? What's happening to you who may be being marginalized? And I think that the voices that you have collectively is really important. And that's why I'm excited to be here today, because we've got this incredible opportunity to make a difference today and tomorrow and going forward. But it takes a lot of work, and it takes some patience, which when I was your age, I did not have. My wife tells me I still don't have. But it does take patience.
So we're all in DC right now, and after this conference, everyone's going to go back home, and we're talking a little bit about how Alabama's Democratic Party is now referring to young people as children. So the Alabama Democratic Party, how are Democratic parties on the state level engaging with young voters, and how do we change that? How do we take this seriously with our role once we go back into our states? I mean, that's concerning.
Well, look, Alabama is a little bit of an outlier. We got real problems in our state party, and we're trying to correct them. When I was in the Senate a few years ago, for the first time, we changed the Alabama Democratic Party bylaws so that we created a youth caucus. Because at the time, our state party had about 250 people, and only like 18 or 19 were under the age of 35. Okay? Because they were elected and then they were selected by the Supreme Court controller. We created this youth caucus that put an additional 50 young people. Well, the folks that were in control, that didn't screw up the party, are back in control now. And so they get away with the youth caucus. They wanted to come and have them on a committee, and they just ignored them, won't let them vote, won't let them do anything. And so we're trying to change that. Rules and bylaws committee is meeting today with challenge all that. That's not happening everywhere. You look what happened in Wisconsin. Wisconsin really engaged youth voters in that election for the Supreme Court. And it made a difference. And it's so important because what's happening on the other side, you go and you listen to so many of Republican operatives. They are talking about the fact that they're going to do everything they can to suppress youth vote, whether it's college campuses or across the board. They know they don't want to compete for those votes, and they'd rather try to do things and put laws in place to make it more difficult for the youth to vote. Because, look, I'm going to be candid about this. There's some things that I say that you might not like, but it's true. We're very impatient. And if there's a roadblock for a lot of people your age, well, if there's a small roadblock, they just say, forget it. I'm not going to go. Well, we got to make sure people understand how important it is to go around that roadblock. Not let that roadblock stop them from having their voices heard, having their vote counted. So parties across the country need to really be engaging. They've got to know where young people are. And by that, I'm not talking about the college campus and their location. I'm talking about where they are on issues like gun violence and climate change, on issues of human rights and basic civil liberties. We've got to go where people are, and we've got to listen, not just talk. And I think that's part of the problem my generation has had. We want to tell you what you should do and not listen to what you feel like you should do.
Well, I mean, there really only seems to be one party that is actually willing to engage and listen to young people. And you mentioned that Wisconsin saw historic turnout in the 2022 election as well as the special election. But we also in Tennessee, yesterday we had on Anderson Creighton from North Carolina talking about how the South is changing. I want to ask you, as someone who formerly was a Democrat in Alabama and now is actively working to turn back the state, you mentioned meeting people where they are. What are some other things that young people can do to really disrupt this, to really make sure that we get our voices heard against a party that doesn't take us seriously?
Well, look, I want to make sure we got a couple of things. First of all, don't underestimate or don't think that the Democratic Party is the only party that's trying to engage young people. Look what's happening on the other side of turning, and some of those. That is frightening. Okay. And if you go on the internet, and I'm not as socially media savvy as you guys are, but I see stuff on there that scares me to death about young people, okay? Because they're pitting one group against another group, and they're trying to shame one group in favor of another. And that's the kind of thing that I think the Democratic Party has got to stand up and speak out against. And you've got to go and you've got to listen, you've got to engage. But the folks in this audience, the folks that, the voters of tomorrow, how this generation has grown up in a completely different world than what I grew up in. But you're also growing up in a world, on the one hand, that has recognized human dignity and human rights and has embraced a lot of people. But now that's turning back. And you're also growing up in an age of gun violence. You're growing up in an age where the oceans down off the coast of Florida are getting to be 100 degrees, which is going to really dramatically change. And so I think that folks have to go and listen and engage. And for people here, you've got to get engaged. And it's not something that I think everybody likes to work on the presidential campaign. Everybody likes to work on the senatorial campaign. But where the rubber meets the road is at your local city council, and your local county commission, and your local board of education. That's where you can have the biggest impact.
So let's zoom out a little bit. We talked about Alabama and the South. You had the honor of serving in the Biden administration a couple hundred years ago. At this point, helping confirm Ketanji Brown Jackson, the first Black woman to be elected on the Supreme Court. And I want to ask you about that because that's something I don't think enough people talk about in the media. And that's something that young people are really concerned about. The Supreme Court is taking away rights. Talk about what that confirmation process looks like and how Biden is reshaping the judiciary and what that means for all of our lives and the rights of the American.
Well, unfortunately, I don't think Democrats have ever taken the Supreme Court as seriously as they have now, and the judiciary as they have now. And I'm not faulting anybody for that, but they just haven't. I've just watched over the years. And but what we saw with the Trump administration is a radical departure. And what we saw with the way that Senator McConnell ran the Senate, where he denied Merrick Garland even a hearing when President Obama nominated him, but at the same time flipped it over and all of a sudden, Justice Ginsburg dies 45 days before the election, and he made sure that Justice Amy Coney Barrett not only gets a hearing, but gets a vote. And they control the Senate, and so she is confirmed, and now there's essentially a 6-3 majority on that court that is very conservative. And, President Biden came in as was a former Judiciary Committee chairman and understands the importance and significance of having a very diverse judiciary, not just politically, but in terms of race, in terms of religion, in terms of gender. And he is doing it. He has put more black women on the bench, particularly in the appellate courts, than any president in history. And I was just so honored to serve as the so-called Sherpa for Justice Jackson, who I think is going to have a major impact on that. And the confirmation process was difficult in one context. What people really didn't see about the confirmation process was all of the meetings, and we met with 97 of the 100 senators. And it wasn't that the other three just basically. No, it wasn't. It was just a logistical issue. It was not a, hell no, I don't want to talk to her. It was just more of a logistical issue. But they were also not, everybody was very nice. And she will tell you that. Everybody was very engaging. Everybody was nice. They were courteous, professional. But you get these lights like this turned on with TV cameras, and all of a sudden people become, rattlesnakes. And it was, the hearing was tough. But she was prepared for that. She knew that. And she understood that it was truly political and not personal. She said that to folks. And so the judicial selection has become very, very partisan. These days it's going to continue that way. And that's not because of the process, it's really because of the individuals that are in the Senate, that are on judiciary, that they get that way. But it is critically important. It is critically important. It is why votes are so important to get out and elect not only a president, but to have control of the United States Senate, so that ultimately, one of these days, that pendulum can swing back.
What is the number now of the total number of judges? I think like 140 now, and more than any other.
I'm terrible with that, so I don't know.
I think it's 140.
But it's a lot.
Oh, it's a lot. It's more than Trump and Obama
Yeah.
had confirmed at this point. So it's really amazing what's happening on the judiciary. Let's end by talking about 2024. We're about 16 months away from that election. You mentioned the importance of state and local elections, but we here at Oregon tomorrow are mobilizing, engaging young voters every single day with one goal in mind, which is making sure that Donald Trump doesn't win office in 2024 and helping elect as many pro-democracy Democratic candidates as possible. Talk about what that looks like and why President Biden is the choice and the best choice for us, compared to something like the Labor Party or the Ford Party or anyone on the Republican side, right?
Well, to me, that's a no-brainer. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm very biased about this because I've known Joe Biden for 40-plus years, and he's been a friend. And so when I first met him in law school, I believed then that he would be president, and he would be a great president. And he has absolutely lived up to that. Joe Biden has come into this office with an ability to govern, and that is a real critical component of being president, is the ability to govern. And you govern by listening to people, by talking to people. And just look what he said. Look, it's easy to see where we are now and forget that when he was sworn in, we were still in the middle of the pandemic. We were still not having gatherings like this. We had just gone through an insurrection. I was at the inauguration, and walking through barricades and fences and all, and seeing National Guardsmen sleep in the Park Senate office building was just a vision that I never want to see again. And what he did was to rebuild this economy. He said from the ground up and build out, bringing 13 million jobs, more than any president's ever done. He is bringing down inflation, which was a result, by the way, not of anything that he did, but it was a worldwide problem with supply chain issues and coming out of pent-up demand with coming out of the pandemic. He has done all that. He has been a bipartisan infrastructure. First president in a year. Your communities are going to see billions of dollars coming in for roads and bridges and schools and broadband that no president has ever been able to accomplish. And look what we're doing around the world. Look how he has brought together our allies. Our allies was as fractured as ever when Donald Trump left the White House. He's brought them together. Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine helped bring that together. But it was Joe Biden's leadership that has brought our allies together. So, look, a third party is dangerous for this country because you've got Donald Trump on the other side. There is no way on God's green earth that a third-party candidate is going to win an election in this country. Our system is just not set that way. They have some good messages, but at the same time, they're not going to. There's no way they can get 270 electoral votes, and either it puts Donald Trump directly in the White House, or it goes to the House of Representatives that also puts him in the White House. And that's a real danger. That is a real danger. It is a threat, as you said, to democracy. And that's why I'm going to do everything I can, and I hope all of you will do everything you can to re-elect Joe Biden.
I think that is appropriate at this. Luckily, you don't have to go for me anymore. Senator Jones is going to go up to the lectern and deliver some remarks. Thank you so much for doing this. And for being
Thank you, Victor. Always great to be with you. I'm not sure I'm going to stand here. And I'm not going to talk long, but I want to keep up with this theme that I was talking about a few minutes ago. And that is engaging on a very local, granular level. We have got to make sure that your voices are heard. And you make your voices heard locally in your community. Yeah, you can get involved in the politics of the president in 2024. And I want you to, make no mistake, I want you to. I want you to make sure that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are reelected. I want you to make sure that you tell folks that are thinking that they might want to vote for a third-party candidate that is a mistake, that they're going to end up potentially putting Donald Trump in the White House again. And I'm going to tell you, I've been around a while. And I've never been more concerned about this country. I've lived through civil rights. I grew up in a Jim Crow South. I grew up watching the Vietnam War fracture this country. I grew up with Watergate and all the corruption from the Nixon administration. But at the same time, I've never had an experience where I've seen a group of people attack the United States Capitol to try to prevent a constitutional duty of transferring power from one administration to the other. The violence that occurred. And more significantly to me almost than what happened on January 6th is the reaction I am seeing now with Republican members of Congress and others who are denying what that was and just simply saying that was just a group of visitors. It's a group of kids coming up. It was people just peacefully protesting. BS, folks. BS. And that to me is the danger that we're facing right now. With someone who is the leading candidate for president of a major political party, who has been indicted twice, probably going to get indicted again, who has been impeached already twice, has a $5 million sexual assault judgment against him, and continues to have a voice that makes him the leading contender for the nomination of a major political party. I never dreamed in my wildest imagination I would see this country in that position. Ever. So what's it going to take? It's going to take resolve. It's not going to take just pure rhetoric. It's going to take resolve. It's going to take people getting out door to door and talking to people and engaging people, not screaming at people, not threatening people. It's going to take people getting out and talking at the Board of Education when they are trying to do away with history and they want to teach that slavery was really a jobs fair. It's going to take some pushback from that. It's going to take going to City Hall, going to county commissions. Then you can get engaged with a presidential campaign, a senatorial campaign. But where do you make a difference is next door, with your neighbor, with your friends, with your family. Coming from Alabama, believe me, I got family who don't like to talk to me. That's where you can make a difference. And what I want to do is I want to encourage, I've never seen a generation like this. And I mean that. I have seen younger people in this country do amazing things. Younger people around the world. Remember, I grew up in the Jim Crow South, and I grew grew up at a time, I was a little too young, and I don't know if I could have participated anyway, but I grew up at a time when young black kids were streaming out of the schools only to get hit by fire hoses and dogs in Birmingham, Alabama. To just really simply peacefully march for civil rights and human rights and voting rights. I've seen youth over the years protest the Vietnam War, protest Richard Nixon and Watergate. I've seen all of it. But you know what? Those generations are not facing the same kind of threats that you were. They were passionate. They needed to get out and they needed to do things. But your generation is being hit with so much. And it's you that are going to be here. You, your children, your grandchildren. It's hard to think about that right now. But the youth of this country has been the mobilizing force. The youth around the world has been the mobilizing forces for good. Whether it's Tiananmen Square or the kids that got hit with fire hoses and dogs. But you got to stay strong. And you got to also understand that democracy is not pretty. Democracy is a series of compromises to work together to a common goal. Oftentimes I've seen too many people that will essentially say, we've got to do these 10 things or else we do none. I'm telling you guys, I've been around a long time. They ain't gonna get you very far. Revolutions don't just happen. They happen slowly. They work their way across, and sooner or later, things come around and you are able to do more. So you've got to, people are asking me, and I just did this thing, what will it take to engage young people? Young people need to engage older folks, too. You need to talk, and you need to listen. I tell people all the time, with our youth of today, folks like you've got to not only talk to you, you've got to listen. And you've got to understand it. You got to understand that your generation is the generation that is being affected most by climate change. Your generation is the generation being affected most by gun violence in this country. Your generation is the generation that is going to be affected most if women's reproductive rights are being taken away. So we've got to understand, but you also need to understand there's a hell of a lot of experience with people. And so we've got to engage in these dialogues. We've got to make sure that we talk to each other because we are facing the threat of our democracy is under siege like it's never has been since the Civil War. And even then, even with the Civil War, it was just North versus South, and there was still going to be a democracy. It may not be one you like. But what we're talking about now is far beyond that. If you look and see what's happening in the state of Florida, what Donald Trump, if you didn't read the New York Times article recently about what Donald Trump is planning to do with the federal government if he gets reelected, you should. And it should scare the living hell out of you. Because it is not a democracy, it is a presidential dictatorship of what he wants to set up. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm being very serious. But what we have and what we have fought for so long, what the youth have fought for so many generations before you, is all in jeopardy. But it's been these same generations that have let the gun violence get out of control. They have let the climate get out of control. You'll be here. This is going to be your country. It's going to be your world. And it's going to be up to you to start having that now, to have those voices, to make sure people get out. I want to give you a couple of statistics, and I'm going to get out here. Across the South, when I'm talking about going somewhere, going places, you got to go to the South. The South is where the change is going to be. I tell people all the time, I've said this for many years, y'all may know a little bit about my history. But in 1963, 60 years ago this year, a bomb exploded in a black church and killed 400 young girls. And it changed the course of civil rights. It was not until 37 and 38 years later that as U.S. Attorney I prosecuted the guy responsible for that. And that is the kind of thing that we're going to see again if we're not careful. It's the kind of thing we've got to be engaged in kind of stuff. And we've seen so many times that the youth have stepped up. But then, for whatever reason, it just doesn't always fit. And that's why we have the gun violence problems today. It's why we have the crime issues today. You've got this amazing opportunity, like no generation before you, to want to save this democracy, to save this planet, to save children going forward. But you got to be smart about it. And you got to talk to people and understand where we come from and understand that history. You know, and I am absolutely confident. I am absolutely confident. That's why I'm so excited to be here with you, to do things with you across this country. Because I know that I've never seen activism like this. Never seen it before. I've seen it in bits and pieces, never across the board. And what I want to remind you, President Obama used to say, we are the generation, this is when he was running and when he was elected, we are the generation we've been waiting for. Well, I'm going to tell you folks, and I don't mean this, I'm solicitous, I mean it sincerely. You're the generation I've been waiting for. You guys are the generation that I've been waiting for. And you guys are the generation that can help foster the change. You may not be the members of Congress yet. You may not be the governors or senators or presidents yet. And that's okay. Because you can make the change without holding the office. And so that when you then get in the office, it can be even better. So I want you to really stay focused. I want you to stay engaged. And remember to get engaged in that work. And I want you to go to places. I want the next one of these to be held in the South. I want you to go with people. Remember the folks that don't agree with you. You got to talk to them. I want you to go to the South. I want you to go to the Midwest. I want you to go to these red states to let the younger generation there know that there's a better way than listening to some idiot like Nick Fuentes. Okay? I want you to make sure that those folks understand and know what democracy is all about, because that's what you're all about. And that democracy demands respect and dignity, and that's what you can do. So don't go stay in your silos. Don't stay in the silos of your social media. Get outside there. Get outside your comfort zone. And work to make sure you kind of pull people in. Because you can always do this. That's the challenge. I'm going to tell you, that's the challenge. It is the challenge for my generation. It's the challenge for yours, that we not just stay in these silos and only talk to people that talk like us or act like us. We've got to broaden it out. And when you're doing that, you can not only save this democracy, but this democracy is going to be a hell of a lot better shape for you and your generation. So thank you all for having me.
Introducing the first openly gay Black member of Congress, Representative Monhair Jones.
Well, good morning, everyone. It is really, really, really good to be here with you all. This organization has a very special place in my heart because it is led by people who worked on my first campaign for Congress. And it is comprised of people, all of you, who I know are going to save this country. When Raghav asked me to speak at this conference, it was a no-brainer. Any effort to organize young people and set you up for success in this political arena is an effort I want to be part of. I have seen what your generation can do because I saw how Raghav and hundreds of young people organized on my first campaign and shocked the nation when they helped me get elected. And many of you are in this auditorium and will today. You know, when COVID hit in the spring of 2000, voting for me and why they should vote for me. You recorded heartfelt videos, and you created the sickest memes that drove my opponents crazy and that helped get our message out at the same time. I will never forget how many parents approached me on election and told me that the reason they were voting for me is because their children told them to do so. That is your influence. In the end, you helped catapult me from a guy who grew up poor, black, and gay, never imagining someone like him could run for office, let alone get elected, all the way to the halls of Congress, where I got to represent the same people whose homes I watched my grandmother clean. You helped me. Now, in that improbable history-making campaign, we took on a state senator, a state assembly member, a senior Defense Department official, the heir to a $1 billion fortune, who outspent us 3-1. We also took on the fossil fuel industry, the military industrial complex, an army of corporate lobbyists, and let's face it, Washington's political establishment. I have never been Washington's streets. We saw that the first time I went, and we sure as hell saw it in the district in New York. The truth is, if you're in this room today, you're likely not watching this choice either. It's just a fact. That is usually the case when you're the youngest person in the room and willing to shape things up, to save the planet, to raise the wages of everyday people, to cancel student debt, to restore and protect basic freedoms like abortion and marriage equality, to stand the Supreme Court, and so much more. No one in elected office ever pulled me aside and told me I should run for Congress. I ran for Congress in spite of that, and I got there because of you. And we hit the ground running. And when I say we, I mean we. Because I have only been able to do things as a result of what young people have helped me with. So at age 33, I became the youngest member of House leadership. And Axios rated me the most legislatively active freshman member of Congress. And I am proud, with your help, because it takes you organizing, to have been part of the most productive Congress in modern American history. There is just no doubt about it. When you look at the nature of what we accomplished, the scale of the work that we did. Democrats rescued the American economy at a time when it was on the brink of collapse at the height of COVID. Under the American Rescue Plan Act, we funded a national testing and vaccination strategy that simply did not exist under the previous president. You may recall, and if you were in high school at the time, so I'm not sure if you were paying attention to politics yet, but you may recall that the prior president told us all to drink bleach. We saved countless lives. We expanded the Paycheck Protection Program, which kept our small businesses open. We cut child poverty nearly in half. Nearly in half. Through our expansion of the child tax credit, and now we have to make that permanent. In my district, I was able to bring hundreds of millions of dollars for schools, housing, and healthcare, and my colleagues did the same thing in their districts around the country. Now, when I ran for Congress, I vowed to you that I would take climate action to ensure a livable future for my generation and for your generation and for generations to come. Clean air and water. Imagine communities that don't flood when it rains, like what happened in my district during Hurricane Ida, which unfortunately resulted in 4 of my constituents losing their lives. A planet that is not literally burning up. We have seen the data over the past few weeks about how record-breakingly hot this month has been. The Inflation Reduction Act is the greatest climate action we have ever taken in the United States of America. We, all of us in this room, we made that happen. We worked together on that. yourselves a round of applause. And you know that we cannot celebrate. We cap the cost, by the way, of prescription drugs for people on Medicare, like my grandmother, who I watched work well past the age of retirement when I was growing up, just to pay for the high cost of prescription drugs, medical procedures not fully covered by Medicare, as we know. Since January, no one on Medicare has had to pay more than $35 a month for insulin. And now we have to cap the cost of prescription drugs for everyone in our economy, whether they're on Medicare or not. We passed the largest infrastructure bill in generations and the most significant gun reforms in 30 years. But we still need to pass an assault weapons ban and universal background checks. We even passed my bill with Representative Jerry Nadler called the Respect for Marriage Act, so that same-sex marriages will be honored by other states and by the federal government, even if the Supreme Court overturns its prior decisions in Puerto Rico. We all did that together. But now, so much of the progress that we have made is unraveling. Progress not just in the last 2 years, but progress that we have made over the past several decades. It has been 29 days since the far-right supermajority on the Supreme Court of the United States made me and so many others in this room today second-class citizens who decided Rio Creek created. We said that businesses can deny a service based on who we love. Last year, the Supreme Court's far-right majority ended the 50-year-old constitutional right to an abortion, gutted the EPA's ability to address climate change, and further expanded the Second Amendment beyond recognition, even if you take an originalist approach to the Constitution. And even as we experience an unprecedented number of mass shootings in this country. Those of you who follow my work in Congress know that the thing that most animates me, the thing that I am most passionate about, is saving our democracy. Republicans are waging the worst assault on the right to vote in this country since the last Jim Crow. In the past couple of years, hundreds of voter suppression bills have been introduced in states around the country, and in many of those states, those bills have become law. Now, the twice impeached, serially indicted former president has pledged to pardon the insurrectionists who nearly killed me and hundreds of my colleagues on January 6th. He is likely to be the GOP nominee. The response from within his party has ranged from crickets to a full-on embrace. And so I hope you realize that there are no moderate Republicans left in Congress. These people must all be defeated in this next election. Otherwise, they will entrench minoritarian power and make it impossible for democracy to ever take hold in this country, a true multiracial democracy. And make no mistake that we don't have a truly representative government, a true multiracial democracy, then none of the things that we care about enacting in this room and making it law can be possible. It's why I co-authored legislation that became known as the Freedom to Vote, John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. This bill would restore the Voting Rights Act, which the Supreme Court has hobbled in decision after decision since 2013. It would end this pernicious practice of partisan gerrymandering, which allows elected officials to choose their voters rather than voters choosing their elected officials. It would create a small dollar program of matching donations so that young people and working class people can more easily get elected to Congress, to federal office. And it would root out dark money in our elections by imposing disclosure requirements. when you think about the role that you must play in saving our democracy was next election cycle, think about what your generation did in Tennessee in April. And I know that you heard from Justin Jones last week. You won the hearts and minds of an entire nation, and you brought the governor of Tennessee to the heel. You got him to support common sense gun reforms that he never had any intention of support. And that is just the beginning of what your movement can and must do in this next election. And you will be following in the legacy of the great John Lewis, who got us the original voting rights act, and other young people like him who came before all of us. I am so excited to be steadfast in this fight with all of you. I know what you can accomplish because I have seen what we have accomplished together. And I am so looking forward to what we will do in this place. Thank you.
Increasing the panel on protecting education, Sari Rosenberg, Graham Roth, and Javier Gomez. Thank you so much, everybody. So great to see everyone here. So, as you know, we are the education panel for today. And that is a topic near and dear to my heart. My name is Sari Rosenberg. I'm about to start my 22nd year of teaching preschool. In New York City High School, Patterson High School for Environmental Studies. I've been teaching U.S. history for almost 22 years now. And I'm also the co-founder of Teachers Unified and Gun Violence. And today I am your moderator. So I'm really excited to be here. So right next to me is, I'm sure you all know him, it's Javier Gomez. Javier! I'm so excited to have him on the panel. And I'm going to read this because I don't want to mess up anything from your bio. And it's really short. The bio should be longer. You should have read more. So many. So as you all know, Javier is a queer activist, student organizing, fighting against all the anti-LGBTQ plus legislation, especially in Florida, where he now resides. And so during the 2022 and 2023 legislative sessions, he helped mobilize and uplift queer youth voices in the community, and he helped put queer rights on the map by organizing, lobbying, and testifying in Tallahassee. So let's cheer for that. Thank you. So right now, we were just talking about this backstage. He is currently studying political science, but he is on a pre-law track at Miami-Dade College. And he hopes to take, and I know he hopes he is going to be taking his activism into public office in the very, very near future, probably like tomorrow at the rate you're going. I'm manifesting here. So thank you, Javier. And we also have Graham Roth here. I'm super excited that Graham is here today. If you're not familiar with Graham, he is the senior writer for campaigns and elections for at the National Education Association, NEA here in DC. So let's give him a hand for that. And you should talk to him later because that's not the topic of the panel, but he's done really incredible political work in the past as well on some really famous campaigns. He now serves on the National Board of Progress Now, and like I said, he worked for several different progressive organizations and political campaigns, so you can maybe sidebar with him later for some stories. I'm a history teacher, I like talking about all that. So basically, we're here to discuss, as you all know as students right now, the attacks on education. And in my 22 years of teaching, I've never seen anything like it, and I almost every day I feel like I'm living in an alternate reality when I see the headline. Now, I'm lucky enough to teach in New York City, and if any of my students are watching, they know that I pretty much frame every lesson like, I don't know if I could teach this in Florida right now. And I'm not speaking in hyperbole, and that makes me really angry and makes me change what's going on right now. And that's why I'm so glad we're here to talk about this. And just a quick overview before we start talking to our guests, I want to get this right. Since January 2021, so not too long ago, there are 44 states, I'm going to say that again, 44 states have introduced bills or some sort of actions, other stuff that would restrict teaching what they call critical race theory. We all will talk more about what that really means because it's not something that's actually being taught. Or basically limit how teachers can discuss racism and sexism, and this is according to an Education Week analysis. So you got 44 states who introduced bills. But here's something that I find really important to keep in mind. Can you tell that I'm a history teacher? Because I'm like kind of doing a lesson right now. I'll stop in a second. But so 44 have introduced these bills or actions, right? But only 18 states of those 44 have imposed these bans and restrictions. So either through legislation or other avenues. So there's been 44 bills out there, right? And that's the stuff you hear in the news, right? But only 18 states have put this into action in some form. So that's something to keep in mind. So now let's get into it. How does that sound? You want to get into it? So I have 3 major questions today. Hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A. And if we don't, please speak to us afterwards. We've been talking about this all morning. We'd love to keep talking about it after the session. So my first question is, I'm sure all of you are living it, right? You probably know what's going on in your respective states already. But I want to start with Graham, and then I'm going to go to Javier. Graham, can you add to this overview? Tell us what's going on nationally, and then Javier will go to you, and you'll talk to us specifically about what you're seeing in Florida. So Graham, let's talk to us about just what's going on nationally.
So you started this off mentioning the number of states that have restricted curriculum, restricted classroom discussions about especially racism in the last years. The right-wing energy has sort of shifted to limiting discussions on gender and sexual orientation. But I think a couple of things. None of that's pushing out stories, that pushing out how welcome people feel in a way that is destructive. A lot of this is also often overlapped with state voucher pushes, and that shouldn't be the case. Right? People are taking popular institutions, right? Public schools, often the hub of the community, really where about 90% of American students go to school. So we're talking about really the future of education and trying to sort of scandalize it, right? People feel like they don't know what's going on, they're concerned, right? They're trying to make it feel fraught and difficult. But I would point out a couple of good things. In a lot of states, there's sort of a different path going on. You look at places like Michigan, Minnesota, Maryland, New Mexico, Massachusetts, where there's been these historic school budgets passed, right, which goes straight into recruiting more teachers, lower class size, more attention, more support, more specialist positions like school psychologists and counselors. So taking steps forward, right? Universal school meals, different things like that. So you're seeing states kind of pulling off in different directions. And there is like a positive story too. The other thing I would say is that you're seeing, I think, conservative politicians get out over their skis politically. So what I mean by that, in the spring, you've seen there's a poll that called Navigator Research, and they asked, I think, battleground state voters what were their top concerns about the House majority, and there were like a battery of 17 issues. And so the top issue, not surprisingly, was people worried about cuts to Medicare and Social Security, Medicaid. Right? These were things that were very much that are popular and that Republicans were starting to cut during the default crisis. But the fourth issue out of 17 was book bans, and politicians interfering with ethnic schools and whitewashing history and preventing students from learning about figures like Martin Luther King Jr. and Anne Frank. So, I think we need to they're a real threat, but we need to take a little heart too, that when we tell our story, when we organize voters, we win. And so we shouldn't be intimidated.
Yeah, that's really, I think that's really important to ground us, right? Because the headlines, and it's happened, right? Like you're experiencing, I'm sure, show of hands actually. How many of you live in a state where one of these bills have been either introduced or passed? Wow. I'm not really an estimated crowd, but it's like more than that. So it's a real thing, but I think it's really important. Thank you for that. Just keeping it real with us because I think that it is happening, but I don't think it's really actually popular with most people. I know it's not popular with this group and most young people, right? So Javier, tell us about what's going on in Florida and the work that you're doing there. I mean, that's actually, actually, I should have just been like, Javier, what is Florida?
First of all, I think I can create a lesson of what's not happening in Florida. Because there's just a plethora of different things that are happening related to education. But really, right now, I don't even like this, but DeSantis is creating, it's like our classroom to become political, battlegrounds.
There's so many words.
There's so many words, but
yeah, they are
you know, in a place where we go to learn, where we go to self-explore, where we go to understand why we have our values and actually reassess our values, we are kind of met with this wall of a political battleground where we can't just learn. And sometimes classrooms are also about learning. Classrooms are specific. I don't like to say here because a lot of schools are really for a lot of kids, specifically going through discrimination or bullying. But in reality, classrooms are not a space where you go to create your vision of what you want to be as a person, but also what you want to be. So what I'm trying to say about that, in Florida there is so much laws and there's so many bills being introduced to limit the discussion of what we have, what is real history, what is not whitewashed history, what is the protection of you as an identity in classrooms. Classrooms are becoming this hostile place that used to be safe spaces for us to have real conversations about the world. And unfortunately, it's becoming a place where sometimes a lot of us don't even feel safe anymore. We can even bring like gun violence. Or Florida is like open carry just became criminal carry just became a big thing on July when it was action. So we're constantly fighting battles to even learn the simplest things of this. We deserve to learn. But Florida is just becoming something that is very indigestible and it's just becoming very I think it's heartbreaking to see what Florida is becoming, but
I mean, from my perspective as a teacher, I was something like our extra educator voices, and it's on YouTube, you can watch them. We started to talk to teachers and school staff about what they were going through during COVID, right, during the heart of the pandemic. And very quickly, our conversation shifted to talking about the real issues and concerns facing teachers in states like Florida who are contending with these curriculum bans and book bans. And a day doesn't go by when I don't think about these teachers who are my colleagues who could be me if I happened to be control and decide to be a teacher there. And what they share with me comes down to something really basic, which is, number one, they're many times being forced between their principals and their paycheck, and that's not okay. Right? This is their dream job, this is their profession, and they're being forced to commit educational malpractice.
especially they're very underfunded.
And right, they're not even getting paid a fair living wage, a professional wage at all to be doing this, to be contending with this. And the other issue too is, I can go on and on about that, but the fact that, the second issue, and I'm going to go into my next question is, and I talked to Santiago about this a little while back, and it's basically really attacking, they're attacking your rights, your rights. Your right to learn, right? Your right, or everyone who raised your hands, right? My students will get to learn about the difference of race and racism because I'm actually encouraged to teach the truth and help my students understand what this country is about and you know, the complexity of history, right? But then what happens if every single one of your teachers who K through 12 is now qualified to teach this, you will be sitting next to my student in a college course. And yes, there's other things like the internet to learn this stuff, but you're not, it's an unequal education in this country as long as we keep this up, right? I'm very passionate about this, as you can tell. And so it leads to my next question, which is basically like, why is it important that we keep up this fight, right? So let's go to Graham and Javier. Why is it important that we keep this fight going, and how do we keep this fight going?
Well, so you did something really important. Remember, we're campaigning to protect the freedom of learning, the freedom to teach. And these are not small things, obviously. Right? Like it's the freedom to understand our history, to understand our communities, to understand our present. Right? You can't start stripping that down or start narrowing the American experience or the understanding of whatever. I think also, you know, whether I think one thing that really concerns me is these reports, not only of the laws that are passed, but of teachers feeling worried, right? As you said, they're worried about their jobs. And so understandably, starting to sort of self-censor, saying that we need to be careful what we say. And what we can't do is allow our public spaces, schools, libraries, to get limited in that way. Right? We want to be able to have these sort of robust experiences and conversations together. And I think that's part of what's going on. It's not only specifically what's in the curriculum, but the message that sends about whose stories matter, whose don't, who belongs in a place, who doesn't. My answer is that public schools are for all of us, and they have to be. And that's kind of what I think some people are attacking.
Yeah.
But that's what we're defending.
So running out of time, so I'm gonna kick this to Javier, and I want you to tell everyone what you've been doing so much. So aside from starting your own VOC chapter in your state or in your school, so if you don't check and see if you have a VOC chapter in your state. If you don't, start one. If you do already, start one in your school. Okay. So aside from doing that, Javier, what can they do? Because that's what we're action oriented, right? We are action oriented. So what can we do? Tell us today what we can do starting today.
Well, one of the things I always want to reemphasize is youth health. And I know a lot of people say that, and like it's very shallow because you hear that from like really old people, and you're just like, okay, like because we always want to have a seat at the table, we always do, but when we do, we're either tokenized or we're just not given the power to speak. And I know it's hard. It is hard because as youth, we want to be taken seriously. We want to have a voice in the table. But unfortunately, most of the politicians that we have in office really don't give a shit about us. They just think that they just want us to have, they want to have the image of a youth in their vicinity, and then when they do, where's their voice? So, one of the things I say, I representative Summer Lee was actually talking about this yesterday. It was really fascinating. Everything is political. It is. It is political. Everything, these chairs are political. Your outfits are political. Your makeup is political. Whatever. But what I'm trying to say is that your ability as a youth is it's so powerful. It is. You have so much ability to create change, move mountains, and all that stuff. But what I'm trying to say is that it's hard for us because a lot of us really are politically apathetic and not by choice. A lot of us don't have the resources and accessibility to go out in the public and be like, I want to create change. My activism and stuff like that has been a constant journey of learning. Because I was put in this not by choice. It was by I'm really a queer person in Florida. I have to fight for my right as a person, but also the right of people. So while it is really hard and it's navigating, your networks are the most important things that you have in life. Because one voice is amazing, it is. But when we come as a collective, it's so important. So while I do think that yes, getting involved is very important, I also think that making each other learn and unlearning prejudices and also learn about the things that you can do. Because if we're not together in this fight, if we're not learning and not we always never settle for the bare minimum. Always settle for the full maximum. Because we as youth, we have the future ahead of us. People are gonna die soon. I'm sorry. But like, what I'm trying to say is that while it is really hard to get involved, there is people around you that know stuff. So actively learn about it. Actively learn how to get involved. But in a way that it is your passion. It is what you want to do. It is your niche. So I know I'm going on a tangent, but I wholeheartedly believe that in order to make change, you have to start introspect, like looking inside yourself, looking at your community and how you become first your community, because community is all the dominant factor. Right? Community goes to state local goes to state goes to federal. And also look into local elections. I mean, we presidents are here and there, whatever. But in reality, you go to school buildings, organize. I mean, it's super important because you never really know the importance of local elections until you're actually in that room fighting for your right to run, your right to have a vote. So, yeah. So,
there's so much. We could go on. And so, if you want to speak to any one of us after we wrap now, come talk to us. If you have specific questions about what you can do, but I think Javier and Graham gave you some great ideas. And it's an ongoing conversation. So thank you so much, Graham. Thank you so much, Javier. Thank you so much to all of you for all of your work. And have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
And now, introducing for a panel on digital communications, digital communication specialist Annie Wu. Activist Olivia Juliana, and senior producer at Media Matters for America, Kat Abou-Ghazaleh.
How is everyone? So, I have all my notes on my phone, which I feel like makes sense. But first, I just wanted to let Kat and Olivia give a little introduction of themselves. I'm Annie Wu, she, her pronouns. I do digital and strategy and consulting and lots of random things. In kind of the political space, but also in the organizational space, usually on progressive organizations and campaigns. And I am usually in Philadelphia, so shout out always.
Yeah, I'm Kat. I work for Media Matters. I watch Fox News for a living and make video content about right-wing media and the general nonsense that accompanies it. I used to watch Tucker Carlson full time, but then got fired. And yeah, that's what I do.
What do I do? So much. Everything. I started on TikTok in 2020 as a walk in my bedroom in small town Texas. I was like, this doesn't seem right. And just started making videos, and that grew into being at Judge for Change for 2.5 years. And now I'm a senior advisor for Lose Cruise Hack. And I make political TikTok videos and social media. And you know, sometimes I will make congressmen for fun.
So I know my background, I was journalism and political science, and I talked about when I was in college trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And a lot of what I do now didn't exist. It was in 2013, which is a bit for you guys. But when I started college, but doing things on the internet kind of came about, because I enjoyed it and I was passionate about things in politics and whatnot, but it wasn't necessarily, it was kind of an accident of like, on the first one, how did you guys get your start in wanting to be involved in media, wanting to be involved in politics, and online?
I mean, like I said, you know, I was living a very small conservative town in Texas, and I always talk about, you know, being outside of Houston, when just in shockwaves, not just through the country, especially in Texas. And I remember going to my father, God bless him, and being like, this is wrong. Like, I want to go to Houston or like March. And he's like, you're not going. Like, if you go, don't come home. And I was like, okay. So I started making TikTok videos. I was like, I'm gonna speak my mind somehow, whether you like it or not. And he raised me to do that. And he's actually very, very supportive of me now. And so I just started. I just kept going, and it really blew up into this thing that I never expected it to. I was just a kid, a working class family who now, after when that case thing happened, and if you haven't, just Google it. I'm not going to get into it. It's really weird because I was supposed to go to college to be an English teacher. I wasn't going to be in politics. I wasn't going to do any of this. But I think that that's kind of really reflective of, social movements and, making changes. You don't really expect for some of these things to happen. They just kind of do, and then when you got the collective action behind them, is when you can actually really start to make a difference. And that's when I joined TikTok for Biden at the time and got into the youth organizing space, and now I'm hopelessly addicted to it. So I'm stuck here for a while.
I went to school just up the street, actually, at George Washington University, and I graduated in 2020, which is a horrible time to graduate from college. And being at GW, I studied international affairs, focusing on security, extremism, genocide, atrocity, all the fun stuff, and journalism. And being there, I just got really disenchanted with politics and with media and with just so much that was going on in the country. And so I was looking for a job, and this one watching Fox News for Media Matters sounded interesting to me. It was a merging of all my interests of writing, of monitoring extremism, and stand-up comedy. And so when I was a kid, I used to do box set DVDs and do video editing software to make the early form of animated music videos. And so I asked my boss, I was like, can I get a Premiere membership instead of having to make a new fake email every 2 weeks? They gave it to me, and then I've been doing that for 2 or 3 years. And this January, I decided to do more on-camera stuff because I realized that connects more with people than reading, than looking at a supercut. They want to talk to a face to hear reliable information from someone who knows what they're talking about. And so I started summing up what's happening on Fox News, and to my surprise, people want to hear it. And so that's just kind of where I've been this year.
Okay, so going off of that a bit, talking about having a personal persona, brand, and putting your face out there and being affiliated as young people, as women. I know that especially in the online space, there's being taken seriously. And I think especially in the online space, it is new, especially with younger people. And how seriously do we take younger people, even though we very much should? And so how has it been navigating being a young person, being a young woman in these spaces and trying to be taken seriously for your expertise, for your craft, for your opinions?
I'm sure everyone on this stage knows just how vicious people can be online to young women, especially ones that speak out for things that they care about. But it kind of feels like things are changing, at least. Especially in our generation, we aren't putting up with BS. And even the effort to intimidate people or to try to make a joke out of them because they're a woman, by objectifying them, by bringing them down to their physical appearance to try to downplay their points, doesn't have the effect that it did before. And it's just kind of this white noise. And I think that you're always going to have those vicious elements. But the best part of being taken seriously is just taking yourself seriously and not letting that get in the way.
100%. I mean, for me, honestly, I think I'm just crazy. Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, I grew up, I'm sure this girl will understand, just craving academic validation. And I was super involved at school, and so as twisted as this sounds, whenever somebody insults the way I look or, my identity, I'm just like, confused debates. And it doesn't bother me. It really doesn't. I think, I don't want to speak over anybody, but I feel like in this space in particular, because I am a plus size woman, I get very different comments than a lot of other women in the political space. And it's really weird because the same men who make those comments publicly that are very nasty are the same ones private messaging me on Twitter and Instagram. And it's just this weird dynamic. But I've gotten to the point of, I'm like, what if this matters? And if a kid, like a working class kid, a community college student, first in their family to graduate from college, if I can come from all of the trauma and lived experiences that I've gone through, having meetings at the White House, or meeting the president, or talking about legitimate political policy issues in the Capitol, why do I care what some jackass online is saying about the way I look? That doesn't matter.
Actually, I'll fix because of argument. It fixed feminism. Okay, so
Also, we're all hot, so
So with the online space and being able to speak out, what strategy and what kind of thought processes do you have about your online personas and about combating people who might be coming at you, whether it's other outlets or it's people? What are your personal strategies that you use thinking about growing your online personas, but also like for the causes or for the news purposes that you care about?
I don't scare easy, and I think that's the thing is, in particular with the interactions I've had with Republican men in particular, is they're always trying to be mad. Like they're always trying to get you to fit into this hypersensitive box that they've kind of painted all people on the left out to be. Like, oh, you're triggered, you're a snowflake, you're gonna cry about this. I don't do that. And I don't let that narrative get away either. Like, no, in that case, we're not gonna, you're not gonna say, you're a horrible person for making fun of a teenager. I'm gonna bring up the fact that you're an ineffective lawmaker, you're wildly unpopular, and you really haven't done anything the entire time you've been in Congress. And the same for all the other ones, even on the issues. And I think that, especially with young people, we're seeing that more and more and more of, like these outrage cycles and these very theatrical political moments. I don't play into that, I don't care for it. And I think when we kind of hold our own against it, and we're like, why are you talking about the Barbie movie, Ted Cruz? Like, that is really not that important when we have all these things going on in Texas right now. Like, just keeping it on what really matters, I think people really connect with that. Because, like, I don't see online about the aliens. Like, all this stuff is coming out. No one cares. We're like, wait, like, we're talking about rent prices, y'all. Like, we don't want to talk about aliens. Like, we're focusing on this right now. And I think that just goes to show people want to talk about the stuff that's affecting our lives right now. And the more we do that, the less we let them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really just comes down to bullying right-wingers is fun when they spend all of their time trying to oppress people, all of their money, all of their legislation, when it really just comes down to their party is full of weird freaks that are obsessed with your genitals and want to make sure that you don't get health care. That's what it comes down to, and the majority of America doesn't like that. And as far as like that persona, as far as doing what you think is right, it's more about just like talking, like Olivia and I have been talking about, like Annie does every day, just continuing to do that, because these people do try to make this caricature of the left, when really we're just like, what is wrong with you? What are you doing? While they talk about how triggered you are. And, I think that just shows how completely ineffective their actions and arguments are. That they have to resort to calling us snowflakes while they are doing 3 hours of Ben Shapiro meltdowns about the Barbie movie.
Well, with that, how do each of you respond in, the plenty of people that you're calling out, like the Ben Shapiros, and that are media personas, and talking about, hey, you're saying these things that are factually inaccurate, or why are you spending your time doing this? And then I know on your end, potentially the lawmakers that are responding to you, people who are elected, people who are on our side elected, on both sides. And so how do you manage, the online calling out, calling in, making sure you're saying the right things, making sure, when you need to press post and when sometimes it stays in the draft?
Here's a tip for everyone. You do not need to get into Twitter fights. Like, there is no reason to get into Twitter fights with random people. It's completely unnecessary and will do nothing for your mental health. That being said, myself, like my own videos, as well as my organization, Media Matters, what we do is we post clips of what people are saying with transcripts. Like, that's something that's on our website every single day. And usually I'll have some right-wing media figure, some idiot that'll be like, you're putting words in our mouths. And I'm like, the transcript is right there. And I think it's those times that it's, important but also fun to respond, because they're just living in this fantasy land. So I think it's important to call out when they're just blatantly telling a lie or blatantly ignoring your point. But also, it's fun. It's fun.
You totally just called me in, because if there's one thing Olivia Giuliani will do, it's going to get into some Twitter fights. Honestly, I think it's Maxine Waters has this quote where she's like, if you come for me, you better knock me down, because there's nothing worse than a wounded animal. Seriously, people on the right in particular, and they do, if you're a right-wing figure and you're going to come after me, you better make it a one and done.
Have the receipts.
You better have the receipts, and you better make sure there's no avenue for me to come after you. And it usually doesn't work out that way. But as far as calling out versus calling in, I called out quite. Go to my Twitter. You'll be self-explanatory. But I think that something I found to be really effective is, and I know you all know how to network. Where we are. Is if it's someone you know who you're like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that, honestly, just talk to them about it and be like, hey, let's talk about this for a minute. And just not doing the texting people like, did you see this? Don't do that. Just text them and be like, hey, what's up with this? And I would say Twitter fights, if it's with a bigot, I say go for it. If you have receipts, fight them with facts, fight them with logic, don't fight them with feelings. And I know that that's a really hard thing to say because we care about people, and we're like, hey, it hurts my feelings that you think that I shouldn't have human rights, but they don't care about that. You need to be like, hey, this is unconstitutional. Hey, this breaks that law. Hey, that makes no sense at all. And just really, come with the receipts. I think that's the best way to beat this up. It's just with logic and facts and, light bullying at times.
That being said, I do think you have some people that are just not going to listen. And if you really want to respond, all you have to put is LOL, okay, and watch the meltdown. Because you have those people that just aren't going to listen.
So we have a little bit time left, and I want to get to talking about young people, and especially when we're talking about things like receipts or knowing what information is factual. Where do you think young people are going for their information? What do you think young people should know about when they're seeking out information, making sure who they're listening to is credible, what they're reading is credible? What do you guys keep in mind to make sure intake is responsible? Well, where do you see that happening for the young generation?
I'm on TikTok far too much. honestly, I get all of my news on Twitter from Kyle Griffin, Scott Braddock. That's a Texas deep cut, if any of y'all know who that is. And God bless Taylor Lorenz. Like, honestly, and I think, like, find your journalists who you know and trust and stick with them. And honestly, I watch the news every night. Like, I have Hulu.
Okay.
I literally, I'll sit on my couch and be like, oh, Joanne Reed is on, time to watch the news. And I'll sit there like an old lady with my coffee and my newspaper, which I do read. And I think, honestly, and if I could change anything about political media, it would be bring back local newspapers.
Woo!
Honestly. Like, please support local journalism, because let me tell you, local journalism is so underappreciated, and they also know your community so much better than national news outlets are going to. So just do that. I'm on Threads, but Threads seems like silly, fun, goofy right now. So I'm sticking with my Kyle Griffin and my Texas War Room Twitter accounts for now.
I think that a lot of these organizations see social media as like a way to control young people, when really it's the only viable way to connect with them nowadays on a wide scale. And these sites are good for that, for on-ground reporting, for having people that you trust on TikTok or Twitter or Threads or whatever it may be. At the same time, it is really important to make sure that you are not just buying into someone's opinion, and that's not just for the likes. Actual information is now being transferred through ad breaks, is now being prioritized by how many commercial spaces are bought. And it's really important to recognize that. Following journalists, following publications that have a good track record, following ones that issue corrections when they're needed is really, really, really important. And just because it's someone you like or someone with a pretty face doesn't mean it's true. Additionally, there is this issue with getting caught in like an echo chamber that every human will fall into. Every human is biased, every human will fall into, these people that they like. There are some things that I'll hear went super viral on TikTok that I have never seen in my life, never heard of. And as all of these sites split apart, and you have all these different groups of people leaving one site and joining the next, it's really easy to fall into that trap. So diversifying your views, by diversifying your sources of information, and critically thinking about where you get it is extremely important.
Absolutely. How many of you read a newspaper? You can be an online subscription.
Be honest.
Yeah, good. How many of those are a local? How many of you will read a local? Good. How many of you follow at least 5 journalists on Twitter or different outlets?
This is awesome. I love this.
This is really good.
Yeah,
great stuff. How many of you follow me? And if you don't, I'm not now.
So I think we're about to wrap up. But with all that being said, what are your last takeaways for young people that are looking to maybe get involved in the online space, whether that is, through more of a journalistic route, whether that is more of a political operative route, getting information, just navigating, X and Threads and all of the things that are now existing. Final words.
First off, don't trust billionaires.
None of them.
Second, if you are interested in creating content, especially as an independent creator, I know that we've all grown up in this world where seeing yourself as a machine is seen as noble or something great, a good worker. That's not good. Don't let yourself be a machine. And I think in the next few years we'll start seeing a lot more focus on creators' health and thus the health of the message. Don't let yourself be ground into dust by your own making because of the 24-hour news cycle. I would love to see solidarity with creators and sites that host their videos in the future. But yeah, I think that's really important to remember that you are a person, not a cog, even if it's for a good cause.
Yeah, absolutely. Protect your peace. Like, if something online is bothering you, block it. I have over 200 people blocked on Twitter and TikTok. And I'm serious. Like, this is my curated little space that I'm making where I want to get news and stuff. Like, if I don't like what I'm seeing, if it's hurting me, like, block him. Like, what are they gonna do? Like, yeah. And also, I think, like, taking care of yourself, like, making sure that you're, like, sleeping. I know that this room probably struggles with that.
To yourself right now?
Girl, I was just in the mountains for a week. I'm good. Like, and take time off your phone. I'm so serious. I know it's hard. Like, I have a horrible technology addiction. Like I'm preaching in the choir right now. But honestly, I think just find something that grounds you. Like, find something you can come to and be like, all right, I need to turn my brain off of all of this for a while and just do this. For me, that's professional wrestling, which is really weird, but it's so fun. And it's like, these are my 3 little hours a week where I don't have to worry about politics. I can just watch the men fight. And it's got like little drama aspects in it. So just find your thing and like give yourself that time, turn your phone off, put it on D&D, and then just enjoy yourself. Because like, at the end of the day, we have to remember there are more of us who want to do good things and who want to make change than bad guys who want to keep those things from happening. Just keep that in mind. Like, we have community. You don't always have to be stressed about everything.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll say what I say to always when young people, and I always tell people when I say that. Like, along with what they're both saying and boundaries, like, you're all here today, and we need all of you. We need all of us. And with all of us comes, like, we can take care of each other. Someone can take a break because there's more of us that can take that person's place when they need to rest. And I was on the John Fetterman campaign, and obviously there's been a lot in the news about his health and taking care of that, and a lot of good reception to understanding that people, even people who work in the government, probably more likely than people who work in the government, that need to be making sure that they're taking care of themselves. And it's stupid, like, put your own air mask on first. But in this work, I think I'm very guilty of it. Like, we're told that the cause is, like, so important. And it is. It's bigger than ourselves, right? A lot of these things, these rights, these issues, like, lives are on the line, thousands of lives, millions of lives. And it feels really big. And so we don't feel as important as that, which is true in theory. But if we don't take care of ourselves first, and you put the cause always above you, then you're not going to be able to help that cause you're trying to care about. And if you actually care about doing and being in the work and wanting to stay in the work, because it's really hard, it's really tiring. I'm sure everyone's been exhausted at different points. Like, you need to take care of yourself first, and just as young people, like, boundaries from social media boundaries, like how much you're scrolling, what you're putting yourself out to, what is harmful to you. You don't have to experience that if you don't want to. And so, take care of yourselves. Like, we need all of us, it's our future, and we need to be able to stick around and be in it to fix it, because there's a lot to be done. Yeah.
I've been asked this question a lot, and performative activism is annoying. It's annoying. Like, let's just be honest for what it is. It's really annoying. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen someone do something in the abortion rights space or the immigration space, and I'm like, that is offensive to the people who have come before us. But it brings attention to the issue. And if you take that attention and you're like, hey, you see what this is? I'm going to direct you here, then that's when you capitalize. Take advantage of that attention and redirect it to something that can tangibly make a difference. Because we all know, like, people online have the attention span of goldfish. And grab it while it's there, redirect them, and make some stuff happen. I mean, like, people are going to be performative because, it's easy. It's easy to be a performative activist what's not easy is maneuvering that into something else. But if you're consistent at it and you try and you practice and you focus on it, you'll be able to get to that point. And the more that we do that, the more that we direct people to those kinds of things, I think the less and less the just surface level stuff will be happening. And I did want to add on real quick. I think the best thing I've ever heard in terms of taking care of yourself is somebody told me, if you burn yourself out by 25, you'll never know what you could have accomplished by 30. So I'll leave you all with that thought.
I think, and then we do have to wrap it up. I know I've seen some hands, but people will be around. If you have other questions, also I'm sure people have feelings. But I think with performative activism, I know I think of like corporations and things now. But if you think back, if we think about, like, for example, June, we joke a lot about all these companies slapping a rainbow on stuff and being like, yay, pride for June. But if you think back, like, to 30 years ago, if you were to tell someone, like, every corporation is going to be trying to be a part of this, like, that would not have been even a thought in your mind. And so I think, like, yes, we can especially call out and recognize when maybe a corporation is doing that and then they're donating to politicians or organizations that are doing the exact opposite and doing harm. But I think we do need to understand, like, progress. We're getting there in some phases, and some people's entry point maybe is just sharing that infographic to their story. Maybe they're not doing anything else, and maybe we need to be activating them in other ways and reaching out to them in other ways so that they then do, continue on the little pipeline to getting more involved, because everyone's got a different entry point, and some of it might be performative at the beginning, but how then can we get them to say, okay, I'm gonna actually now, like, volunteer, I'm gonna do a phone bank, or I'm gonna, spend some of my money and do something that's, like, is helpful. And so I think it's like, it is those little things, and it's a delicate line that I think everyone's trying to balance, as well as, like, nobody's doing it perfectly. But we need to understand too, like, there's really bad people on the other side. And even if someone's being performative and, we can give that what it is and critique it, but how are we using our energy? And if it's me going out of my way and, like, complaining about this person being performative, I could have taken that time to do something against, like, literal white supremacists and Nazis that are on the other side. We have finite time and energy and resources, and how are we using that? And it's probably not the best to be doing that to people that might have good intentions or might not just know what to do yet. And then use that energy if you want to help them in a way that's productive, because I think we need to give grace in this space. Because again, not all of us, none of us know everything, none of us have all the information, none of us know everything. And do you have anything?
I do, sorry to the organizers about this, but I think you're totally right on this. Like, there is a fine line of being passionate about these progressive causes and excluding others who are nothing but ignorant. And that's not a sin to be ignorant. There's no way to inherently know information. I also think, yes, performative activism can be one. We all know this. But this was a really hard Pride Month. A lot of those corporations that did the rainbow logos stopped because of people like Matt Walsh freaking out, or right-wingers going to a Target and tearing apart the displays. And when we start losing corporations from this activism, but, like, completely ditching Dylan Mulvaney, it's allowing that bigotry to seep into the culture and to say, hey, we will acquiesce if you are big enough dicks, if you make us scared enough, if you start harassing our employees or our baby clothes rack, we will fold. We will fold and we will do whatever you want to. And so I think that corporate activism has its place just in, like Annie said, like 30 years ago they wouldn't do that. And I'm really scared that if the right keeps going at its pace and we don't provide the support to counteract that, in another 30 years it's going to be gone. Which is a bummer note to end on, but I think all of y'all are great. And you're here. You're here, and people like y'all showing up is the reason that it's not going to be gone.
Okay, so I promise we're done, but it's a digital panel, so it feels right to where can people find what you're doing, and or maybe the organizations or causes that you're involved with.
At Olivia Juliana, verified everywhere but Twitter.
X.
I'm not calling.
There are too many platforms now. Our Community Matters, our website updates daily with links to what's going on in the media sphere, from Fox News, actually just media in general, from Fox News to Matt Walsh to Nick Fuentes. So definitely check us on our research if you haven't. And then you can just look at my name, Kat Abdul. There are way too many websites to name, but I do long form content on YouTube, short form on TikTok.
I'm Annie_Wu_22 everything, but you know. But thank you guys so much. If you have other questions, let me know. People will be around. But you guys are great.
Next up, we've got a community leader turned state delegate who is currently running to represent Central Gen Z's first member of the Maryland State House of Delegates, Joe Vogel.
Hello! Before I get started, I just want to give a shout out to Olivia talking about local journalism. Yesterday, I met with a group of local publishers in Maryland because we're going to bring back a bill that I sponsored last year in the House of Delegates to help save local journalism in Maryland. So I was so excited to hear that. And I am just so excited to be here this morning and so proud of Santiago and the whole leadership team that helped put this gathering together to elevate the voices of young people all over our country. Voters of tomorrow, I really thank you from the bottom of my heart for, when I launched my campaign for Congress, it was Voters of Tomorrow without hesitation that was the first organization to endorse my campaign. And you are standing with me now in this race. And if the voters of Maryland's 6th Congressional District give me the privilege of serving them in Congress, I will stand with you every step of the way as we fight for our shared future. And you will be right there with me because the challenges that we face today do not afford us the time to wait to be the leaders of tomorrow. We need our generation's leadership today. Shortly after I was sworn in as the youngest legislator in the Maryland House of Delegates, I met with a longtime political operative who said he wanted to give me some advice. I had campaigned on a bold agenda, ready to take the biggest challenges that we were facing as a state head on. So you can imagine how I reacted when the advice I received was to sit back and to be quiet, to not put forward any legislation or ask any tough questions. I ran for delegate to get things done, to speak up for my community, not to play the game of status quo politics. So fair to say, I didn't listen to that advice. I stood up and spoke up. When my colleagues sponsored bigoted bills, I asked the tough questions and held them accountable. I sponsored bill after bill after bill to address our mental health crisis, recruit more mental health professionals to work in our public schools, address the climate crisis, protect our democracy, and take on the opioid overdose epidemic. And we passed bill after bill after bill. The new perspective, the new ideas, the new way of thinking, and new energy to solve problems meant we could deliver for the people of Maryland. We proved that you can be progressive, pragmatic, and bipartisan, leading with our values and getting things done. Some wondered whether a Gen Z member of the House of Delegates can get things done in our state capitol. And we showed that the answer is hell yes, we can. You can imagine that some political insiders, pundits, and Twitter personalities weren't thrilled when I announced my run for Congress. They doubted, and some still doubt, that a young person can win this. They say, you're too gay, too recent of an immigrant, too broke, too young, too this, too that. Well, if they're judging by history, they're not wrong. Maryland has never elected an openly gay member of Congress. Our youngest member of Congress is older than my parents. We've never elected a Latino, and the last immigrant elected to Congress in Maryland was elected in 1806. And the last time this district that I'm running in was held by a non-millionaire was in 1993, before I was born. But folks, we're going to do what we do best in this election. We're going to work hard. We're going to prove people wrong. We're going to make history, and we're going to get to work. The people of the district I am running in, and folks all across this country, are hurt by the status quo of our politics. I visited a town the other day that has no access to broadband. You pull out your phone, you can't connect to the internet. This afternoon, I'll be visiting a community that's been ravaged by the opioid epidemic. And early next week, I'm gathering with a group of students demanding we finally make the necessary investments in mental health. I've spoken with seniors terrified of losing their hard-earned benefits, young people who fear having to move away from their hometowns due to a lack of job opportunities, and parents who have to drive hours just so their kids can see a doctor. If we continue to embrace the status quo of our politics, we all will be left behind. But here's what we know. Voters of tomorrow, a new era of American politics will only be ushered in if we elect a new generation of leaders. My friends, the fight you are waging right now, it transcends partisan politics. You are engaged in a fight literally for the survival of our country's democracy. Look, when we talk about democracy, I think of the story of my family. A century ago, my great-grandparents fled Eastern Europe. They were teenagers. They boarded ships and sailed across an ocean, leaving their families behind. They escaped fascism, fled the Holocaust, and sought refuge in Uruguay, a small country in Latin America that opened its doors to refugees like them. My great-grandparents became the first, but not the last, generation in their families who watched democracy collapse in their home countries. 2 generations later, the vibrant Uruguayan democracy my great-grandparents had come to, the democracy my grandparents and parents took for granted, collapsed. A repressive military dictatorship ruled the country for 12 years. My friends, I stand here as an immigrant to the United States of America. Born in Uruguay, the country of my great-grandparents, grandparents, and parents. I stand here as someone who has heard the stories of 3 generations of my family that lived under the absence of democracy. I stand here as someone watching democracy in the United States, the country I love, be threatened by far-right authoritarian movement led by fascist wannabes. And I make this promise to you, as I make this promise to myself every day. I refuse to be the 4th generation in my family to watch democracy fall in the country that I love. We must and we will save our democracy. We must stand strong to defend our freedoms, protect the right to vote, and guard our democratic institutions. But anyone who thinks all it takes to keep our democracy is to defeat anti-democracy politicians is wrong. We must go further and restore faith in our democracy. We need people to once again believe that democratic governance delivers for them, that it makes life better for them. People need to believe that democracy is worth fighting for. But for that to happen, we need democracy to keep delivering. We need to make our economy fairer, lift people out of poverty, take on the cost of living, create good paying jobs, and make sure every worker is treated with dignity and compensated fairly. We need to advance solutions to the mental health crisis, the fentanyl overdose epidemic, the lack of access to rural health care. We need to expand the reach of broadband, continue investing in next generation infrastructure, and guarantee a high quality public education for every child in America. And among young people, we need to restore hope and reaffirm the promise of a better future. When young people believe that a better future is possible, as we all do, then more young people will be willing to join the fight for that better future. I want to leave you today with a speech from one of my heroes, Senator Robert Kennedy. In 1966, he said, "Our answer is the world's hope. It is to rely on youth. The cruelties and the obstacles of this swiftly changing planet will not yield to obsolete dogmas and outworn slogans. It cannot be moved by those who cling to a present which is already dying. The world demands the qualities of youth, not a time of life, but a state of mind, a temper of will, a quality of imagination, a predominance of courage over timidity, of the appetite for adventure over the life of ease. It is the young people who must take a lead. Thus, you and your young compatriots everywhere have had thrust upon you a greater burden of responsibility than any generation that has ever lived. Those words were spoken 56 years ago, but ring true to this day. My friends, this rising generation faces yet again a great burden of responsibility. As we face a climate crisis, it is the young people who must take the lead. As we face a mental health crisis, it is the young people who must take the lead. As we face an epidemic of gun violence, it is the young people who must take the lead. As we face relentless attacks on our freedoms and fundamental rights, it is the young people who must take the lead. As our democracy comes under attack, it is the young people who must take the lead. The status quo of our politics, those who cling to a present, will not meet this moment. Voters of tomorrow, you and I together, we are taking that lead. Let's stand strong, win big in 2024, elect young leaders up and down the ballot, including our second Gen Z member of Congress, and restore faith in this great democracy. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you all. So now we will be transitioning into structured networking. That will go into a little after one, and then we will have one. So you should have, or will momentarily receive a message through Remind for what group you will be a part of for this. For structured networking, we're going to be exploring and sharing our personal narratives, issues that we most care about, and how we can all work together. So, just for your awareness of where the rooms will be, Moretti D/F, I believe, will be this side of the room here. Moretti C/E will be this side of the room here. Moretti A is the back room over yonder that way. And then Fisher is the room to the right of the reception area. Could actually, the people leaving Fisher room, if y'all are here, just raise your hands. Ava, Sonia, Talia. If you could raise your hand, maybe stand up, wave. Awesome. Cool. That's the person you're trying to find. Moretti D/F, Cameron and Ryan. And then y'all are here in the back there. People you're trying to find. Moretti A, Kate, and Zach. There y'all are. Those are the people you're trying to find. And Moretti C/E, Sam, Paul, and Victor. Over yonder there. Those are the people you're trying to find. Thank you all so much. After this, lunch, and then after that, we'll transition to some more breakouts and the policy conversations. Thanks, y'all.